Midnight Caller. I never should have agreed to house sit for my friend, Jake. His place was on Pinebrook Avenue, a quiet street in a town I didn't know well. It was an old house, with creaky floors and a strange chill in the air, even on warm nights. But I didn't think much of it at first. I had a week of peace and quiet to look forward to, and I figured it'd be a nice break from the noise of the city. The first few nights were fine. I spent most of my time watching TV, texting friends, and just trying to pass the time. It was on the fourth night that things started to feel off. It was around 11 p.m., and I had just settled into bed when I heard it. It was soft at first, almost like I imagined it. But then it came again, louder this time. I sat up, my heart pounding. The front door was at the end of a long hallway, and from the bedroom, I couldn't see who was there. I glanced at my phone. No missed calls, no texts. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not this late. I slid out of bed, my feet cold against the wooden floor. I crept down the hallway, my breath catching in my throat. As I reached the front door, I hesitated. There was no peephole, just a thick wooden door between me and whoever, or whatever, was on the other side.
Who's there?
I called out, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. No answer. I waited, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I thought about calling Jake, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. Maybe it was a neighbor, maybe it was nothing. I told myself I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Crack. There was no one there. I stepped out onto the porch, scanning the empty street. Pinebrook Avenue was silent, the streetlights casting long shadows across the sidewalk. I stood there for a few moments, waiting, but nothing happened. I locked the door and went back inside, trying to shake off the chill that clung to my skin. But as I walked back to the bedroom, I heard it again. This time, it was coming from the window. I froze. The window was right by the bed, and the curtains were drawn. My heart raced as I slowly approached. With shaking hands, I pulled the curtains back, half expecting to see a face staring back at me. But there was nothing. Just the empty backyard, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe a branch had hit the window. That had to be it. But then, the phone rang. The sudden noise made me jump, and I hurried over to the bedside table, grabbing my phone.
Hello?
I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, and then I heard it. A deep, raspy voice that sent chills down my spine.
I'm outside.
The words were barely a whisper, but they echoed in my head like a scream. I stood frozen, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind raced. Was this a joke? But the voice was too real, too cold. I slowly backed away from the window, my eyes darting to every shadow, every corner of the room. My body tensed as I heard it again. This time, it wasn't the window. It was the back door. The back door was right off the kitchen, and it led to a small yard surrounded by woods. My phone buzzed in my hand, pulling me from my thoughts. Another call. No number. I hesitated but answered.
Hello?
The same raspy voice came through, louder this time, as if it was just outside the walls.
I'm coming inside.
The line went dead. Panic surged through me. and I ran to the kitchen, grabbing the first thing I could find, a large knife. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I stood there, listening, trying to hear past the thudding of my heartbeat. That's when I noticed something that hadn't been there before. The back door, it was unlocked. I knew I had locked it earlier. I had double-checked it, just like every other door in the house. Slowly, I crept toward the door, trying to make as little noise as possible. My mind was racing, the world outside the glass door, completely dark. I reached out to twist the lock, but just as I touched it, something slammed against the door with such force that the whole frame shuddered. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the knife. My heart was hammering in my chest, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. I stood there, staring at the door, waiting. Then I heard it, breathing, slow and heavy, just on the other side. It wasn't the wind or my imagination. Someone or something was standing right there, inches away from me, separated only by a thin layer of glass. I stepped back, clutching the knife tighter. My mind was racing. Should I run? Should I hide? Before I could decide, the doorknob twisted. My stomach dropped as the door inched open. Just a crack, enough to let the cold night air seep inside. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel it, that overwhelming sense of being watched, of something lurking in the shadows. The door opened wider.
No.
I whispered, barely able to hear my own voice. Then, slowly, a hand reached around the edge of the door. It was dark, like the night, with fingers too long, as though carved from pure darkness. My whole body went cold. I stepped back, nearly tripping over the chair behind me. The hand slid further inside, followed by an arm, then the silhouette of a figure. I couldn't make out its face, just the outline of something tall, impossibly tall, its head nearly touching the ceiling. The air seemed to hum with a strange, static energy, like the space around it was warping. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My throat felt like it had closed up, my body frozen in place. The figure stepped fully inside, its movements slow and deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. It didn't speak, but I could still hear that voice in my head.
I'm inside.
The lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a second. When they came back on, the figure was gone. I stood there, gasping for breath, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. But the room was empty. The door was closed again, locked. The only sound was the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. I slowly backed up, my eyes scanning every corner of the room, waiting for it to return. I didn't dare move toward the door or even look out the windows. My hands were still shaking, the knife feeling heavy and useless in my grip. Then the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer. I knew who it was, but something compelled me, and I lifted the phone to my ear, my voice barely a whisper.
Hello?
The same voice, raspier now, almost a growl, filled the line.
I'm already inside.
I bolted from the kitchen, every instinct screaming to leave, but as I passed the hallway mirror, something caught my eye. My reflection, only it wasn't quite right. My face was pale, my eyes wide with fear, but behind me, in the glass, I could see it. The tall, dark figure, standing so close I should have felt it. It was watching me, smiling. I screamed and dropped the phone. The lights flickered again, and the house plunged into total darkness.
Ensure your horror fix. Subscribe now, hit that bell to stay notified of new terror-filled releases.